Dr. David Sapgur, thank you so much for joining us for a conversation today. We have a few topics we'd like to cover surrounding walking and wellness. But before diving in, would you mind just giving us a quick introduction of who you are and your background?
Thanks for having me, Lindsay. David Sabger. I'm a cardiologist in Columbus, Ohio. Started a nonprofit Walk with a Doc in 2005, actually 20 years ago yesterday.
Awesome. And for those who maybe aren't familiar with what a cardiologist does just on a day to day basis, could you describe that practice a bit more?
Absolutely. We diagnose, treat any disorders of the heart. This can involve blood work, stress tests, pacemakers, stents, runs a pretty wide gamut.
And just going back to Walk with a Doc, I know the organization just hit, I think its 20th anniversary recently. So congratulations on that. Um, could you describe a bit more about the whole mission of, why you created that nonprofit in the first place and why it's so important right now?
Absolutely. As you know, as well as anyone, walking is critical to not only our physical and mental, but our emotional health. And the rates of sedentary lifestyle is astronomical. So really wanted to dive into that. Also, in the office, was seeing early on in my career how there were two paths. One path of patients really thriving in their 80s and 90s and living high quality lives, had a common denominator of being physically active, and that was usually walking. So really wanted to get the other path that was sedentary to have all those joys and successes that the walking group had.
Um, Yeah, I love that. And I'd love to get a bit more into what you've already touched on in terms of why this is so important. I have a stat here that maybe we can start with, but according to the World Health Organization, 81% of young adults currently aren't meeting the recommended levels of physical activity, and they're declaring it as an inactivity epidemic. So, could you describe a bit more about the real cost of what this looks like in terms of long-term health effects?
Yeah. First of all, I think it's great that they're calling it an epidemic. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to not only improve the length of our lives, because almost all of us aren't really interested in getting up early or getting out of bed to go prevent a heart attack that could occur 20 years from now. But we do want to feel better right now. And walking does that. So we'll certainly get into it, but dozens of physical benefits that are really something unmatched by anything we can provide with medication. And then there's also, in these times where there can be incredible mental stress, there's a huge improvement in our mental health and emotional health as well. So it's really the miracle drug.
Yeah, and that's the perfect segue actually into our next question here, which is how does walking stack up exactly with other forms of physical activity, which I think are more considered obvious and rigorous forms of exercise, so like jogging or weightlifting. To your point, I think there are so many benefits to walking that are under discussed or people just might not be aware of. So, what
Yeah.
exactly are those on a physical and mental level?
Yeah, it's a really important question because there is this misconception that walking isn't enough when it absolutely is. Personally, I do love to walk, but I also really love to run, bike, and swim. And I the benefits of walking are just there, are there equal to those. It just may take a little longer. Um, if you're going to cover, say, 2 miles, you'll of course get there faster if you're jogging or running, but you still get the same benefits. And there's then the added low impact component to it where you're not doing as much to your joints. And
Mhm.
there's certain times, and where, say it's after dinner and you want to lower your blood sugar. You're not necessarily going to want to go or even be able to go for a run. But going for a walk will lower your blood sugar. It's very doable. Grab your dog, go for 10, 20 minutes, and incredible health benefits there. So I look at walking as the gateway drug to other forms of exercise if you choose, or you can just stay with walking. Again, as a cardiologist, I have countless patients in their 80s and 90s that just walk some every day, and that really does make the difference.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess for people who are looking to start incorporating walking more into their daily routine, I think the general rule of thumb that most people know of is the 10,000 steps a day rule, which I think is about 5 miles. So, not necessarily a short distance, especially if you have someone who's working full time or is working in a physically rigorous job all day. What are your thoughts on that number? Is that fact or fiction?
Yeah, it's actually a fun story. After the Tokyo Olympics in the 60s, they created, the Japanese created a pedometer. And the reason they chose 10,000 was that number looks like the Japanese figure of a person walking. So it was arbitrary. It is, you're exactly right. 7,000 steps is more achievable for a lot of people. The more, the better, but you're getting those really dramatic benefits at 7,000. And even if, a lot of us, as you stated, 81% of youth right now are not as active as they could be to reach that full potential of health and happiness. So I recommend just doing everything you can to get what you can. All of us have different obstacles. And if you can squeeze out a 3-5 minute walk, that's great. Shooting towards that goal of 7,000 would be awesome.
Got it. Wow, I had no idea about the origin story of that and just how arbitrary that number is. So, are there any specific times of day that are best for taking a walk, just factoring things like someone's energy levels or their mood or their metabolism, or maybe they just had a meal? Are there specific times of day in their routine where you'd recommend someone factoring in that walk?
It's a great question. And with walking being the Swiss Army knife, there are benefits of doing it at every time of day. Let's just take morning, afternoon, and night. So morning, when we can get out and get those happy chemicals of endorphins and dopamine, serotonin. To me, I love that because it sets a really nice course for the day. Also getting that, there's a lot of talk recently about getting that first sunlight, the first light that hits your eyes being natural as opposed to from your phone. So that's huge. And I think a great reason to get up early. Lunch, it can often, I'll hit a wall sometime around there on most days, and it really sparks creativity. Our creativity goes up 60%, even with a very short walk. And again, I don't think it can be overstated the importance of dropping our blood sugar. It won't go too low, but dropping it after lunch is huge. And then in the evening, great way to wind down before we go to bed. If it's after dinner for blood sugar, to me, it's a great way to connect with my wife and kids and dog. And it's really the Swiss Army knife. I love talking about it because I'm not selling anything. It's free basically. So it's fun to espouse the qualities of a product that's free.
Yeah. And there's so many ways, to your point, that you can make it work for you in your own routine. And it sounds like there isn't really a wrong time of day to incorporate it. Every specific setting has its own set of benefits. But the creative kind of unlocking potential of walking is something I feel like is not as well known. On maybe a more anatomy based level, could you describe what is happening to your body internally after, say, a 10-minute walk?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is important to talk about that this doesn't need to be a half hour, that we can get the benefits with small amounts, 5-10 minutes. So our heart rate will increase. That's not necessarily a discomforting thing. It'll be kind of under the radar, and that increases our blood flow around our vessels, which is awesome. It expands our lungs. It activates our muscles, loosens our muscles so we're not as stiff. It will kind of lubricate our joints so we're not as achy. And then mentally, it'll, by lowering our cortisol, the stress hormone, it'll relax us and release that creativity through our prefrontal cortex. There's just countless things that it can do, even in 10 minutes.
Wow. Okay. Very, very fascinating. And in terms of, I guess, recommendations you might have for someone who is specifically aiming to lose weight, are there any walking habits you might recommend for them? Any ways they could change up their walking routine specifically for that goal?
Yeah. Important question, because obesity is also an epidemic. To me, the key things are consistency and patience. So, that's rewarding yourself for keeping that consistent level. Now, if you want to expedite the process, rucking is a really big thing right now. And I like to do that with friends too. And that's simply carrying a weighted backpack. There are a lot of products out there that can do that. That basically doubles the calorie burn. People put anywhere from 5, 10, up to 40 pounds and carry it around. And that helps our core. It helps, again, increase our metabolism. Other ways to expedite it would be doing hills or some inclines, not necessarily mountains, but just, going up. And then maybe another one would be intervals. So picking, even if it's 10, 20 seconds, biting off a time interval that you feel you can do and accelerating your pace for that period of time, or you could pick a tree, walk to that faster and slow down. Those are all great ways to increase weight loss.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you definitely touched on the next question we had around just, easy ways to kind of shake up your walking routine. Rucking, I've heard a lot about, definitely, and incline walking as well. And I think also just people can find ways to easily incorporate walking into their routine. So where they might drive somewhere to run an errand, maybe they can, take the stairs or go for a walk and listen to music or walk their dog. But yeah, that's really helpful. I do have one final question here. Are there any misconceptions or maybe surprising facts we haven't already gone over about walking that you would want people to be aware of?
Yeah, I think it's the overall one for all of us to get over is that walking is not enough. It is. It absolutely gets the job done. And I still think, I know that it is not out there as well as it should be of everything it does. For example, it lowers our Alzheimer's risk by 50%. That's dramatic. If there was a medication that did that alone, we'd never be able to find it, afford it. It would be the front page of the paper forever. So that's just one of dozens of things that can do, including reduce 13 cancer risks also significantly. It can reduce breast cancer risk by 53%. So I think that's huge. And then what we also, one misconception, like they, if we go for a walk in nature, we underestimate, all of us, how good we're going to feel and how relaxed we're going to feel when we get back from that even short walk. Again, that's another thing that not all of us know, is that even small amounts make a distance or make a difference, and that sets the habit in motion. So I hate to ramble. I could talk for days about how important walking is, and again, proof is in the pudding with these incredible patients in their 80s, 90s, and 100s that are thriving. And again, it's a common denominator.
Yeah. And I think you're just the perfect, source to speak to about something like this outside of your practice. Like, you're working with people in a demographic where, to your point, you're seeing the actual effects at the end or the later stages of someone's life where their lifestyle choices have accumulated into how they're feeling. So, thank you so much for your time and sharing those insights. This was very helpful.